Welcome, everybody, to the Career Discussion Survey, the first installment of the Career Discussion series from the Master's Program in Data Analytics and Applied Social Research, where we meet some of our alumni and find out what they're doing, maybe get some tips on, how to survive life after the program. And we have a terrific guest to start off today. Tim Dindyal at Whistle Sports is, what year did you graduate, Tim?
I finished up my degree in the summer of 2018.
Class of 2018, data analytics, a gifted analyst from day one, and just a super guy. And it's really wonderful to meet you, Tim. I'd also like to introduce or you know what, I'll let the committee members introduce themselves and get the discussion rolling. So committee members, would you like to introduce yourselves and kick us off?
All right. Hello, Tim. I'm Oscar. We have met before, and there are two other committee members. They will be speaking, I guess, when their turn comes up. So how are you doing, Tim?
Alrighty. Who else is on the committee? Miriam?
Yes, Miriam and Maria.
Hi, Tim.
Hello. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Maria. Hey, Miriam. Nice to see you guys.
It's nice to see you too.
All right, and so I guess the way we structured this was that we would just answer a few prepared questions, and then right after that, like most of this meeting will probably be the audience asking questions.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll just get started then.
All sure. Right. So thanks, Oscar, for that introduction. So my first question to you, Tim, is what is your typical day at work?
So my typical day at work, that's a very funny one to try to answer because I'm probably in a more unique situation than most people where I don't have a very typical day at work. Like, you work your standard 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever. But the work that I do day in, day out tends to differ by the teams that I'm working, that I'm working with and the projects that I'm working on. So I'm in a lucky spot where analytics influences pretty much every other department at the company at Team Whistle. So on a day-to-day basis, I could be working with our marketing and sales team, our finance team, our video content creation team, then our content distribution team, and then we have another group of folks who works on paid advertising. So I work with a bunch of different people day in, day out, and analytics applies uniquely to each of them. So I'll talk a bit more about how, like I'll give some examples on how data might influence those kinds of realms of working. So there are going to be a lot of different companies that have some sales function. They need business. They need to either raise capital or attract business from buyers, any kind of buyers, whether it be, I don't know if I want to list all the different types of buyers, but like anyone who has money and is willing to buy something that you're selling, you have to pitch them on it. Right? So in the pitch process, I'll talk about how Whistle does. I'll talk about what Whistle does and how we sell. So we sell video content creation and distribution. So we'll go to a Nike, a Reebok, a McDonald's, an IKEA, and say, hey, we want to do digital advertising for you because we think that we can boost your brand's awareness and perception on the internet. And so here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to create a custom content series. Like for Swiffer, we got 2 NBA athletes, and it was like Nate Robinson, who's really short, and Carlos Boozer, who's really tall. And we put them with the Swiffer duster going around the apartment and called it Messy Mates. So we'll create series like that and say, we're gonna create the series for you. It's gonna be your own IP, Swiffer, and then we're gonna distribute it on, you're gonna be on Facebook, you're gonna be on Instagram, you're gonna be on Snapchat, you're gonna be all over the place. and you're going to see a lift in brand awareness and perception based off of this. And we'll run a study on the back end to say, hey, your brand affinity jumped 10 points with the audience who saw this content. So we'll do something like that. And we'll go to Swiffer and say, hey, buy this from us for $500,000. And then they'll say, is this really worth it? And then that's where I come in with data points to back up and say, hey, yes, this is worth it. Other people have bought this. Other people have seen big lifts in perception, in consumption, in like purchase, like amounts of products purchased, things like that, based off of working with us in the past. So I go in with proof points like that and say, okay, State Farm, spend money with us. Like, this is really worth it. So that's working with marketing and sales folks, and then generally with finance folks too, because finance folks are watching the money, and then they want to make sure that you're getting, like, the sales folks and the marketing folks are making the dollars that they're supposed to be making. And then, so that's like the sales and marketing side of it. But then when you get to the actual product, what we're selling, videos, the videos themselves have to be good in some way, and they have to continually be getting better. And then how do you measure how good a video is? And in a bunch of different ways. You can measure it in terms of how many views you get on a video, but you can also measure in how long people are watching it, watching a piece of content, how much they're engaging with it. YouTube has likes and dislikes and comments. Facebook has like 5 different reactions that you can scroll through, things like that. So I take that data and say, hey, this content was received really positively, or it was received really negatively. People were spending a lot of time with this, or they weren't. And then from there, I go to our content creation team, the people who ideate on new kinds of content, and then the distribution team to say, all right, the distribution team who also works on, well, once we have that idea, where do we put it up? Do we put it up on YouTube? Do we put it up on Facebook? So I work with them to figure out what are the best kinds of content we should be making? What should we, like, how should we edit it? Where should we put it up? And was this successful or was it not? So a lot of different things there.
Great, thanks so much for sharing.
Oh yeah, thank you for that answer. And for the next question is, which data analytics skill has proven to be the most valuable in your current work?
So that's a really great question. And a couple of them have proven really valuable. I think one of the most is I took 716 communications with Dr. Arindras. And being able to communicate effectively in a business setting is something that is way more valuable than people hype it up to be, especially in university, in college. We put a lot of emphasis on it in the program, but it's way more necessary than even we talk about it right now, or that we did when I was in the program, because more and more, like, I've been in the industry for a couple of years now, and more you hear about like data automation, data flow automation, and tech like that. And data analysis automation and data flow automation and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's like a business stakeholder who's going to come back and say, hey, what does all of this mean? And a computer can't do that for you, tell you exactly what the numbers mean. So really being really good at translating what the data is actually telling you, and like effectively communicating that and saying, hey, these are the 5 data points that I have, but this means that you, business leader X, needs to do these 3 things like right now. Being able to being able to effectively communicate that is really valuable. It's often hard to get buy-in, or I'll phrase it like this: as an analyst, the number one skill I think it's more abstract than a skill, but it's like number one thing that you should try to do, or make sure that you can be able to do, is convince somebody that, hey, you should do this thing. And if you can't convince them to do this thing, even though you may know that it's really important, then it's lost. Then your recommendation's lost. The example that I'll give is for one of our big hit series, No Days Off, we highlight these sports prodigies, young sports athletes who are really, really amazing at what they do. Back in the day, we used to highlight older people. A 40-something-year-old guy named Stanley Anderson who can hit 200-mile-an-hour fastballs in baseball. And I said, hey, like, this guy got us 10 million views on YouTube. We need to get him back for more content like right now. And I can say that in a vacuum to myself and to the other analytics folks for like days, weeks on end. But when I'm able to convince our VP of content, hey, go get this guy, like we need to make a 6-part series with him right now. We're going to be swimming in the dollars if we do. That's when things start to come to fruition. As soon as he comes back and says, okay, I believe you, we're going to go do this now, and they invest time and money into it, that's when you know that you've made a real impact. So being able to get that buy-in and then using effective communication skills and visualization skills that we learned in 716 is really, really valuable.
All right, thank you. And I just want to say it's interesting that you mentioned communication skills, because today a lot of our guests, I believe, are from a communication class. So yeah.
Nice.
And Miriam?
Awesome. Great. Yeah, thanks so much. So, okay, our next question is, how did your academic experience in the QC data analytics program help you in finding your job?
Well, it helps a ton. For starters, it helps to narrow your interests first. So I'll start by going down this route. So I had come from a background of working in the sports world, or like sports betting, before I was in the program. And then when I joined the program, I dove into sports related research with Professor Joe Cohen here. We dove into like a sports economics thesis for me. And so you tend to use the program to refine your interests and the way that you think about things. And then from there, from like knowing that I was interested in sports and sports economics and sports marketing, and then, you know, just the realm in general, I know that I should be applying to places like Whistle Sports, because this is what they do. They like live in this world, and I can lend my analytics skill set very, very easily to them. So that's like one easy way. Well, can you repeat the question? Let me go on several different tangents on this one.
Sure. So it was, how did your academic experience in the data analytics program help you in finding your job?
Cool. Yeah. So I wanted to take it down that first. I wanted to go down that first route a little bit, but then in terms of build like skill sets that you pick up and that you learn in the program, I think I took a class 765 data methods with Charlie Gomez, and in that class we were learning how to program in Python. And like knowing that you're interested in doing something like that, knowing that like, hey, Python's really useful as a tool, and I can do a lot of cool things with it, and I can make things happen that a company doesn't have right now. That was really influential to me. So like right now, day in, day out, I am creating data tools that didn't exist, that don't exist on the market, that we can't buy, but we need to do what we need to do. The example is, you guys have all, or like anyone who's on Instagram might know about Instagram TV, and the problem that we face is like, we need the data about how Instagram TV posts perform to sell to our clients, or to like report back to our clients. Problem is that there is no vendor anywhere that you can buy Instagram TV data from, even your own. So you have to build the tools to get that data and work with that data yourself. And so I have to do that. And because I had the experience from Charlie Gomez's class on, hey, this is how I automate data scraping, and this is where I go to fetch data, and this is how I push it into a database, and how I work with it a ton after that. Because I knew how to do that, and I got interested in it from Charlie Gomez's class, I was able to put it into practice in industry. So it's a lot of like finding out what you're interested in, and then just like going down the rabbit hole with it, because you'll often find that like the MA courses will get you so far, and then they'll like show you where you need to be, like the route that you need to take. But then when you go the 3, 4, 5 steps later after that, you'll really be like, you'll be top notch, you'll be top 10% in the field in whatever you're doing, once you keep going down the rabbit hole. I think Joe put a question in here. Joe, do you want to ask it? Getting on the mix?
Yeah, for sure. To make it a TV moment, if you could go back in time and give your first year self some advice when you were just starting off, if you could go back and do it over again, what would you do differently?
Oh, this is a real easy one, because it's so simple. If I were like in August before the program started, and I could say to myself, this is what you should do in the program, I'd say, go to the SQL workshop, learn SQL, start now. It's way more valuable than you could ever think. And it's something that I wish that I had started on earlier. It's a lot easier to like get into the groove of it. Sorry. If you get started in an academic setting. I know that when I was in the program, I didn't put much of an emphasis on learning SQL and using it, because we don't work with many big databases within the program. You think about the kind of work we do in 754 and 755, we're not digging through, or like 710 and 712, we're not digging through massive databases. Like we work with smaller data sets. But a lot of bigger companies are going to have data warehoused in huge AWS databases or Postgres databases. So being able to work with that is really valuable. It's something that I wish I was better in right now. And I've been in industry for a couple of years now working. And it'll enable you to do, like, working with SQL in and of itself isn't fun, right? But it enables you to do the fun stuff later. It's like you have to build the steps to get there. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm learning SQL, it's gonna be the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it's gonna give you the couple of steps of foundation that you need to do the cool, fun stuff. That's the cool, fun stuff, the stuff that's worth doing, the stuff that's gonna like make somebody's eyes light up, and like with a cool recommendation or something like that. So learn SQL, please.
Thanks for that.
Oh, and it's worth noting that the department is hosting a SQL workshop November 8th. Please RSVP by November 1st. Check your email.
All right. So for the next question is, well, you already sort of answered it. Is like, what do you wish you had known when you were still a student? So we'll just go to the next question to Miriam.
Okay, sure. So our next question is, where do you see the future of data analytics heading?
Generally, well, I can answer this from a couple of different perspectives. One is within my own industry, and then another perspective might just be more general. Miriam, where do you want me to take this? In what direction?
I think in both of you can. We could learn from that.
Yeah. All right. So let me talk about in my own industry first, because that's probably where I'm more qualified to have an opinion here. So within the media industry, analytics is going to play so I want to say for the past 3, 4, 5 years, analytics plays a big role at like the social media level and the digital media and like the advertising level. So when you think of how people are putting up content you think about your favorite creators on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, the really big names, the names that you probably think have a lot of money behind them, or that you think are probably making a lot of money. Analytics is probably influencing how they're working, the content that they're making. Like the example that I'll give is Dude Perfect is the biggest sports creator on YouTube. They have something, I don't know how many millions of subscribers they have right now, but I work with them and I influence the content that they make. So in the same way that I influence them, like under the sports vertical, there are going to be data people in the entertainment and the lifestyle verticals. The biggest creators there, they're going to be data people influencing how they work too. And so that's already happening, is the point that I was trying to make. At the social media level and at the digital advertising level. So you think about the people who are buying ads on the ads on Facebook, on Google, on Twitter, on Snapchat. Those people, data is already influencing how they work a ton. They're not going to. You're not seeing ads on social media that aren't the highest quality or like thoroughly vetted by data ads. You're not seeing ads that aren't highly vetted by data at this point. But like that game is already being taken over and standardized by like the big ad agencies. They're hiring out these really, really sharp data scientists, data engineers, those people to make their ways of working a lot more seamless. Where data isn't right now in the media industry is at the more premium levels of content. So you think about how like the OTT space is right now. So what are the new platforms? Peacock, Disney Plus is older, but think about like those realms. But then also like your smart TV apps, your Samsungs, your Rokus. I need another name. I can make more names. There are a ton. But like all of those platforms that are coming out with new streaming apps, all of those networks and platforms that are coming out with new streaming apps, data is very, very nascent there right now. And sometimes they don't know what they're doing and it collapses in on them. Like you guys might have heard about the platform Quibi, Quick Bites. They're done. They had a 7 month run. They collapsed in on themselves. Whistle, who I work with right now, we made content for them. So we were pitching the business. We were like hyping them up. We were their hype man. And they just imploded because they didn't understand how to utilize the data that they had on their audience and their advertising to get a user base to their app. So definitely at that more premium level content, premium level tier, there's a lot more work to be done. And then that's not even mentioning linear distribution. So television, data can influence, like you guys might have seen Nielsen ratings. People like to hype up when, hey, my show got a market penetration of X% in demo or something like that with Nielsen data. Where was I going with that? Sorry. That's like the extent to which people get data on how content performs on TV. It's not like you get so much more data about YouTube videos than you do about how Monday Night Football is being viewed. So there's a lot more work to be done at the higher levels of content. And then Joe, I think you put a question in here.
Here, I'll just ask it.
Yeah.
This is all really fascinating, and it's exciting to hear that there's opportunities that are still to come in the content industry. If there's a student who's interested in that field, analytics for the content industry, where do you look for jobs? What are your job finding tips?
So my job finding tips, the best places to look in terms of finding a job is LinkedIn is great, Indeed is great. And it seems like a vast sea of like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to look. I don't know what to type. It's really much simpler than I thought it would have. It would have been. So like the really easy answer is just go into one of those sites and type in the word media, and you'll see the like media and then media analytics, something like that. Social media analytics, if you're interested in that specifically, and you'll get jobs that come up within the realm of like advertiser agencies or social media agencies. Then you'll also get the Netflixes, you'll also get the Hulus, and then you sift through from there. So media analytics and social media analytics and digital media analytics, digital media advertising, those are all your key buzzwords there. get in there on Indeed, get in there on LinkedIn. Also check out the Built in NYC page. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that. It's for New York City-based startups. There are some really, really solid jobs listed on there. And there's also like a list of digital media startups in NYC on that website. So you can comb through there and see like, hey, what are the small 10-person agencies? What are the bigger, like what big companies have headquarters in New York, the 2,000, 3,000 employee companies, things like that. You get a nice spectrum there.
Can I ask a follow-up? For people who are interested in working for a tech startup, besides learning SQL, how else could they beef up their candidacy to be a more appealing candidate in the tech, the entry-level tech analytics market?
Yeah, so for entry level, like Whistle's hiring right now, and I can tell, or we might have been hiring a couple of weeks ago for like analytics roles, and I can tell you what I would look for because we're in that same realm there of tech startup.
Yeah, it's great.
Tech startup, and we were looking to hire somebody right out of college, basically. So the thing that I looked for was generally like skill set. So SQL, Python are nice to have. Like you'll see that on a million people's resume. And it's like, you need to have it. It's just hard to showcase on a resume. The thing that I had started to ask for to see who stands out is I started asking, hey, can we get like one small sample of analytic work that you've done in the past? It doesn't need to be directly related to what we're doing here at Whistle, but just something that conveys in like a page or two at most, like nothing complicated. Like, hey, this is how I think, this is like a way that I will approach a problem. And it doesn't need to be based around content. It doesn't need to be based around media. It just needs to say, like, hey, I have a problem. These are 1, 2, 3 steps that I took to tackle it. And I came out with a little bit of a nice presentation at the end to show to somebody.
That's awesome. So you think the thesis is a good sort of it's worth investing it to make it good? Is that a showcase that will work for you?
A thesis is good. It's probably too good for people in industry.
Huh.
I don't think any of the managers or the VPs that I've worked with in any of the lines of business at Whistle, I don't think any of them would read a thesis.
Okay.
I would explain to them how, like, the kind of research that I did in my thesis, and I have like abstracts of it at this point. I have like 2-page abstracts. I have a 5-page abstract that I've just needed to make as time has gone by because different people ask for different things. I think a 2-page abstract is an amazing thing to have. And it doesn't necessarily need to be for a thesis, though the thesis is probably like the most polished work that you'll do in the program.
Yeah.
If you have like a term paper from like class in demography with Dr. Reed, or trying to think of other like really big papers that I wrote in the program, or research methods, like a research methods section that you've written, or something along those lines, something nice and polished, something short, something that gets to the point, maybe something that's visual, because a lot of people at the higher levels aren't going to be too concerned with the details, like the minute details, but they'll want to see presentation and how you communicate to other people more. That's really the angle I would take for trying to stand out when applying. One good solid piece of work. And a lot of people will apply to jobs that have like a line to put in your GitHub link or something like that if you're going into a job where coding is a bit more important. I wouldn't even think that it's that important, or like for hiring in the media industry, it's not that important to have a huge GitHub that's filled out with 10 different projects and they're all hyper polished. 1 or 2 really, really good standout, like if we're just talking about code for a second, repositories of code with something to show at the end of it is all you need.
Nice.
Okay, let's see.
Maybe the moderators, can you give Tim a hand and read the questions to him from the chat box?
Well, we have a question from Professor Halen. If you want to go ahead and ask it, Professor.
Do you have any advice on networking, especially now during COVID, because before you were able to go to events and now there are no events.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. I've had a lot of trouble with it. It's the ways that you can like do a bit of like quasi networking is adding random people on LinkedIn whose work that you're interested in. I know what I've done because I'm interested in reading a lot of research around esports. I have gone on Google Scholar and looked at papers that are being written nowadays on esports, and then went to LinkedIn, added these people, added the authors of these papers on LinkedIn, and then started chatting with them a little bit there. That's like a quick and dirty way to like try to get directly to them. But then there are also like bigger, there are also bigger ways that folks are trying to do networking. I know the R Studio conferences, they're doing an all virtual R Studio conference this year to try to foster some of that like learning, like collaborative learning. So going to events like that, R Studio conferences, at like Anaconda for Python learning, we'll have a lot of online sessions for things. Then also get into, I haven't looked into this myself very much, but online communities like subreddits for developers or analytics work. You can often find friends who are creating amazing visualizations. If you go on Reddit and you go to Data is Beautiful, that's a very big community there. So you can find a lot of people who are doing work like us online. To take the step from like, hey, I know that you are another person online, to, hey, let's start chatting back and forth, is a little bit harder to do. I've done that by using LinkedIn, but it's definitely a bit harder these days.
So staying on the COVID-19 topic, how has the pandemic affected your work specifically and data analytics in general, do you think?
Yeah, I love this question because the answer it's so simple and so blunt. It's when COVID hits, funding drops like crazy. So and funding drops and work piles up because two things are happening at the same time. One is, or it's like one thing that's happening that's influencing everything else, which is people aren't making money. Especially in the digital media, digital advertising world, people stop spending money on ads, which means there are less ads that go against our content. So if you're watching a video on YouTube, you're going to see less ads. Or in March, let's say, you saw less ads because people weren't buying them. So they weren't being filled with ads, which means that we weren't making money, which means we had less money to spend on things. So when that happened, the big problem that we were facing was, how do we justify having all of these tools, these analytics tools that we do? What's most useful, what's necessary, what's not? We had to make those decisions. So we had to cut back on a lot of places. But at the same time that was happening, we were also getting an increase in questions from marketing and sales folks saying, hey, we have to find other ways to raise money now that we're not making as much money from social media, digital media advertising. So I need to go out into the market and convince X, Y, and Z brands, Nerf, AT&T, Verizon, to spend money with us. So, hey, analytics folks, come help the sales team try to win business. And so they came to us more frequent than they ever did to say, hey, we need help to win business right now because it's harder than ever. So work definitely skyrocketed, and resources, allocation of resources decreased, which puts you in the position of having to work better with what you have. And so like mentally in a situation like that, it kind of sucks, but also you feel like a bit of an underdog trying to like do as much as you can with as little as you can, trying to win with as little as few resources as you have. So it can be daunting, but it can also be pretty rewarding once you win. Yeah.
Have you seen the environment improve a bit now that we did have a pretty good summer in New York, and hopefully we'll have a decent fall. Have you seen an increase in buying now that people were getting out a little bit more?
Oh yeah, definitely have seen an increase in buying. The caveat to that though is that people are spending money again, but they're not spending as much as they used to or they would have in the past. Like a general example is a deal that we might have sold to a brand for $250,000 instead gets sold at $225,000 or $200,000 because one, they don't have as many dollars to spend, and two, we're like in the current climate, we're willing to do more with less. So yeah, there is some improvement in the industry, but it's hard, and it's going to be hard for a little while. The ways of working in terms of ways of working, it's always for the next couple of months at the very least, if not the next 8, 9 to 12 months, something like that. The attitude is definitely going to be, hey, I have a limited amount of resources, I have a limited amount of man hours, but I need to do as much as I can with the little bit that I do have. So what can I do first to make the biggest impact? And then where do I go from there?
Oh, so Suzanne has a question, if you'd like to go ahead and ask it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Suzanne?
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you so much. You're being so helpful. I'm really enjoying your talk. I was hoping you might go back to your career path for a minute and share with us if you pursued internships, and if you did you find them to be valuable? Was there one in particular that really helped you to build your skills? Do you have advice for us?
Yeah, totally. So when I was in the, so back up a little bit before my master's program. So in undergraduate at Baruch, I was working part-time in the sports betting industry. It's in the same grain of an internship, working part-time, but it's like, it just helps. So that job in particular was data entry and just like exploratory data analysis, the kind of work that we would do in 710 in the program. So getting exposure to that in its most basic form, data entry, is really, really valuable. It helps you see like at the very, very base level of data work, like what gets done, what has to get done in order for the cogs to turn. And so that was really, really valuable. It may seem really, really simple. It's not fancy, data entry and exploratory data analysis. It's like grueling work. It's not, there's no magical moments there, but it helps you like understand, at the very least, understand and appreciate like the amount of work that needs to get put in to come up with a nice, pretty finished product at the end. So that was really helpful. Working part-time or working in an internship that gives you that sort of that experience of, hey, at the most foundational level of analysis, this is what needs to get done before you take 712 and you get into higher level at 712 and 755, and you get into, these are the more advanced methods that are being put into practice in industry. Having that base level helps a lot. And then in the program, I interned with one of our professors a professor in the program, Brett Turner. He's at the New York Hall of Science there, and I worked with him on creating a survey and distributing it to teachers who came in with their classes to the New York Hall of Science, their young kid classes, and seeing if the teachers liked the exhibits that they brought their kids to see. And so working on a survey-based project like that was really, really interesting, because a lot of the talk that I had heard about about working in the industry before then was about big data and SQL and Python and big huge data sets like that, and extracting data and manipulating it. But then there's also a realm of working with data that is much smaller, it's much more compact. It's survey research. You're not working with hundreds of millions of rows of data. You're working with hundreds, you're working with hundreds or thousands instead. And the narratives, the resulting impact is just as great. And in those situations, it's much more about how you frame the results of the work that you do rather than the numbers themselves. I'm saying that very vaguely, but what I really mean is I can run like SQL queries on a database of 1 million rows and get some stats for a business like a business oriented guy, a salesperson. But if I run a study with 1,000 people, 1,000 respondents, and ask them, hey, this is where do you think people should be investing their time? Or like that's a very vague question too. Let me ask it like this. Let me say it like this. If I survey 1,000 people and ask them what's their favorite beverage, that might be simpler and straightforward, more simple and more straightforward than going through the database of Coca-Cola sales and saying sort through this database of number of sales and like prices that they paid and blah, blah, blah. Right? You can cut through a lot of that with survey research and you can have a nice simple finding that makes sense to a lot of people very, very easily.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful.
Yeah, so I rambled a good bit there. What other cool questions did we have?
Okay, so we do have some questions that we the organizers had. And so one of them was, in your opinion, what areas do you think are best within the data field right now?
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. Best in what kinds of ways? Give me some realms to think about this.
Okay, I'm going to ask Oscar and Miriam to help me out here in terms of what realms of data analysis can you did you have in mind?
Sorry, yeah. Let me not leave you on a thread like that. Let me help you out. So there are different ways to think about like the realms of data work that needs to get done. One is like data engineering, and then analytics, and then within analytics there's exploratory. So your standard like data analyst job, which is more exploratory analysis and getting data into the hands of business stakeholders. And then there's your more inferential analytics that needs to get done, where you'll see agencies like more technical oriented agencies hire people who are more like machine learning engineers or predictive modelers, those kinds of people who are a bit more in the weeds on higher level math and coding and things like that. So that's a good juxtaposition to think about. And there's also a juxtaposition in terms of skills that you can have. So yeah, help me reframe the question around, those rounds of thinking.
Well, if you don't mind me, I did have a question that I was wondering, because it's a question that I keep asking myself. Knowing what you know about the field of data analytics, where do you see it in 2-3 years?
Yeah, 2-3 years. In 2-3 years, it's probably going to, in my opinion, it's going to move in terms of the technology behind it. The technology is constantly leveling up. So people and companies are going to be able to do more with the tech that they have. That's a bit vague in the way that I phrased it, but it's what I mean to say is with the data that people have, they're going to be able to do a lot more, and they're going to be able to do it a lot quicker. The code bases, the tech behind all of the work that we do is going to keep leveling up. As a drawback, though, what I've been seeing in a handful of places in the media industry is that the amount of data that third parties will provide to you, especially for free, is decreasing. So tech is constantly leveling up, but availability of data is decreasing. Not at a rapid rate, but at a noticeable rate. The example that I can give here is Twitter recently came out with version 2 of their API, and a lot of researchers do work with tweet level data. with the way that they are structuring their new API and the ability to get tweets, they're limiting access because they want to control the flow of information. Rightfully so, because there are a lot of crazy news stories that happen about misuse of data from Twitter. But things like that, stories like that, and changes to the ways of working with data on Twitter are going to impact how we as researchers do work in the future. And that's only my hypothesis, that that's only going to get worse, that in terms of the availability of data, public data. So we as researchers might need to get a bit more crafty in terms of how we get our hands on data, especially public data, or data that should be public. It's going to get harder in that respect, but the tech that we can use to analyze data is only going to get better, in my opinion. That's what I've been seeing.
Well, since you did kind of touch upon the politics now of data, of basically collecting data, as you know, Google is right now, was recently in Washington, as was Facebook. So how do you personally feel about this rise of collecting personal data and the way it's used? Do you personally have any kind of conflicts of conscience and, you know, have some kind of moral dilemmas every now and then?
I do and I don't, in that I understand where people get hung up on like big like I think they're called FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google. Those guys are using data on how we consume content and interact with other people. I understand how people get hung up on that. I don't think it's as nefarious as the media outlets probably make it out to be. And especially if you think about, like, I'm probably one of the prime users of data coming from social media platforms. Like, if there's anybody to think about like people mischievously using your data, like, I'm probably suspect number one. But I, like, as an analyst doing this kind of work in the industry, I don't care about personal level data like that. I care about the data in aggregate and working with, like, I don't need to know your name, your date of birth, your social security number, and a lot of people don't. It's less of a problem than I think media outlets make it out to be, but it's also because there can only be one thing on in primetime news at any given time. So
it's fake news. That said, we have a question for Farang, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce it correctly.
No, it's okay. Hi, my name is Arwa. I just wanted to thank you for coming to this lunch and sharing your career wisdom with us. So I know we're learning this in 712 too. Like, how do you communicate complex topics to, like, in simpler terms, to other teams in your workplace? I know that seems to be a really important thing to do. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's really, really important to do. And the way that I think about it is, well, obviously different people come from different backgrounds, and so they're going to have different ways of thinking about things. So it's really, really important first to understand, like, hey, am I talking to an analytics oriented person? Am I talking to a person who's, so I'll give the example at my company. So we have a CEO who's a business oriented guy. We have a VP of content who doesn't care so much about the business side of things, but he just cares that we make really, really good content that people actually want to watch. Then we have my director of analytics, and he will understand some of the technical things that I talk about. So it's understanding, like, first, like, what kind of background is somebody coming from? But then even more important than that is just, what do they care about? My CEO cares about his bottom line. My VP of content cares about getting funding for his content. So like, my CEO will say, like, what's our return on investment here? Are we breaking even? Are we not? And my answer to something like that is, it's as simple as it needs to be. The answers that I give back to him are as simple as they need to be, which is, like, yes, this is going to break even. No, this isn't. And then he'll come, if the answer is no, he'll ask, what do we need to do to make this work? And I'll say, we can't make this work, point blank. Or I'll say, we do these two things right, like A and B, and this will work. He's not looking for anything more complex than that. And that is literally what I'll say back to him. If I'm talking to my VP of content, he'll say, what are the proof points that I can use internally and externally to say what we're doing here works? So he's trying to communicate more thoughtfully, or I don't want to say more thoughtfully than my CEO, but he has to communicate more thoughtfully, more in depth than that other conversation between me and my CEO. He has to go and say what I say to him externally to other people, right? And he has to sound smart. So what I say to him has to sound a lot smarter. It has to be more data backed. It has he's going to need to talk in percentages. He's going to need to know what he can and can't say. He's going to need to know a bit more of the nuance. And then, so that's like the big juxtaposition there is how in depth do I have to be, and how surface level can I talk at any given time. And that really stems from just understanding what people care about or what somebody cares about at any given moment. Definitely try not to talk somebody's ear off. The shorter, especially in the working from home, the COVID era, everyone's tired of Zoom meetings. Everyone just wants to get off the call. It's 5 words saying, hey, we should do this. That's not 5 words, but we should do this or we shouldn't do this. It's way, it goes a long way in these times, especially. And then half of the time somebody will care about, okay, why? And then the other half of the time they'll say, that's a recommendation, okay. And it all just stems from saying, putting yourself in somebody else's headspace for a minute. And not anything complex, not anything like, oh, this is how they're calculating, this is how their mind's working. It's just, what do they care about? What don't they really care about? And is this gonna help them or not?
I also had another follow-up question. Do you enjoy working with your team? And are there times when you guys disagree that it causes issue or tension?
Oh yeah. So I love working with my team, in part because we have such a diverse skill set on the team. So my team is 4 people. So we have a team of 4 analytics folks that support the 150-person company. But all of us do different things. So I do a lot of data engineering and analysis. The next guy over does more qualitative work. So he'll look at content more qualitatively for insight. And then another guy works a lot on survey research. And then I have my director above me who oversees. So that's our main mix there. And we definitely butt heads in terms of what our priorities are at any given point, or how best to think about a problem. The example is in the marketing and sales, from a marketing perspective, it's I need to sell Coca-Cola, I'll use again. I'm trying to work with our marketing folks to sell to Coca-Cola. What should be our page 1 stat? I'll say something that's rooted in our YouTube data. The next guy over will say something about YouTube thumbnails analysis, more qualitative analysis. The next guy over will say, no, front center needs to be the survey research finding that we had. And we'll butt heads in terms of what's the best way to do this, because we're coming at it from different perspectives. But coming at it from different perspectives is really useful. So it's balancing that sort of that round table that needs to happen is one of the more interesting but complicated ways of working that we have.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's all the time we have, but thank you, Tim. This was a really great first career conversations. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Professor Katsambis. You were awesome too. Thank you, Professor Rindris, Halen, and Cohen. And thanks to the students. It was great having all of you here as well. This was awesome. Thank you so much for participating, Tim, and thank all of you for all your help.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you so much, Tim. This was wonderful.
Thank you for